All right, heading into week 11 of the fantasy football season.
Oh boy.
We are giving you our trade targets, guys that we want to trade for and trade away. We are catering it towards the fantasy playoffs, okay? We have actually done a trade video catered towards the fantasy playoffs 2 weeks in a row. So there are 2 other videos that you can feel free to watch on our page.
That's right.
All of those are catered towards the playoffs. If you want more trade options, do us a favor, drop a like, subscribe to the channel. All the support is appreciated. And why don't you comment down below and tell us your most difficult trade question before the trade deadline hits. I also want to know in the comments below when your trade deadline is. Ours is week 13.
Yep.
Some people's are really early. Some people's are really late. So
already passed, yeah.
let us know in the comments below. And just to preface the rest of this video, I have 3 takes. Typically, you and I do 4 takes each, right? 8 players.
Yeah.
3 of my 4 takes include like 5 players. So
That's
there
great.
could be 15 players or so that I'm going to bring to you guys or we will bring to you guys collectively on today's video. So just keep that in mind. So stay with us throughout and I'll give you my first trade for. And what I did 2 weeks ago was I looked at sneaky wide receiver buys for the playoffs.
Right.
And I brought you Amari Cooper.
Mm-hmm.
And what I wanted to do today is I wanted to just look at a bunch of wide receiver options that you could potentially go trade for based off of matchups in the playoffs. Good, ideal matchups in the playoffs, okay? Now, disclaimer, and what I always have to say before I do this kind of take is it's important to note that just because a player, specifically today we're talking about wide receivers on this take, just because a wide receiver has a good matchup does not mean I have a crystal ball and I'm telling you they're going to have an incredible week. Incredible performance in the playoffs, okay? But the point of this is for me to give you the information that I've researched, share it with you, not to suggest that you have to make some of these moves, but to give you the insight necessary for you to make the moves that you believe put you in the best scenario for the playoffs, okay?
Right.
So what I did is I looked at the top 10 easiest schedules week by week for the fantasy wide receiver position, and I found the following. 9 wide receivers have 2 top 10 matchups in the fantasy playoffs, and they are DJ Moore, the Chargers wide receiver room, Brandon Cooks, Amari Cooper, the Giants wide receivers, the Steelers wide receivers, Christian Watson, the Ravens wide receivers, Cortland Sutton. So I'm going to show them on the screen now for you. You can see obviously week 15, week 16, and week 17 in front of you. So from 32, that's the easiest matchup in the playoffs, down to 23, which is the 10th easiest matchup in the playoffs each week. So you do with this list what you wish. What I wanted to bring is, okay, so who are the wide receivers that I'm going to be targeting based off this information? And that's what I'm going to give you now. Firstly, George Pickens and Deontay Johnson. Last week, I brought a take specifically on George Pickens. If you want to hear that in depth, I suggest you listen to last week's video. He was one of my players that I told people to go trade for. Or maybe that was 2 weeks ago. I can't remember. But it's been in one of those playoff videos.
One of those.
Okay, so I have a full 5 to 10 minute take on him. But I will target George Pickens and Deontay Johnson. I will also target the Chargers wide receiver room.
Yeah.
Because this is an incredible buy low opportunity if you're in a great position in the playoffs. If you already have 7, 6, 8 wins, then you should probably go target the Charger wide receivers if you need help at flex or in your wide receiver room. You can buy low on Keenan Allen because he's a wide receiver 133 on the year and has been dealing with hamstring injuries the entire year. Now, you can buy so low on Keenan Allen that a lot of people are moving him for people who are on the waiver wire right now. So keep that in mind. You don't have to give a lot for Keenan. You can buy low on Mike Williams because he's currently out dealing with an ankle injury. And the person who owns him might need to get to the playoffs, so they might need to move him because they can't play him right now. Now, for Keenan, there's reasons for optimism because the chemistry with Herbert is clearly missing. They are missing Keenan Allen. There is a clear need for him in this offense. It does not look the same without him, and that should be encouraging for Keenan Allen owners because no one in this offense is going to take over Keenan's targets. They will be waiting for him. And for Mike Williams, he has been a top 13 wide receiver in 4 of 7 games played. So we have seen him have that ceiling. So again, George Pickens, Deontay Johnson, the Chargers wide receiver room. How about Amari Cooper? Again, I did a take on Amari Cooper already. You guys can go watch that on one of those last 2 videos.
Yeah.
But you can buy low on him right now because he just came off a 6-point fantasy performance where he saw only 3 targets. A lot of optimism for Amari Cooper in the playoffs. Why? Clearly the most talented player on this team. The schedule is incredible. History of being a true alpha wide receiver 1.
Right.
And Deshaun Watson could project him as a wide receiver 1 throughout the playoffs. And the last person that I'm really, DJ Moore was kind of on the edge for me. I just don't know if I really am bought in on a weekly guy that I can guarantee in the playoffs,
Right.
even though the schedule is good.
Agreed.
But the last player that I'm kind of bought in on, and I actually think that this could be a league winner this year. I truly think he could be the Amon-Ra St. Brown of this year. That is Christian Watson. He is the last wide receiver from this list that I'm really targeting. In our home league, Badake, I dropped Terrace Marshall and picked up Christian Watson because I was like, oh, something could happen. I don't know.
Yeah.
But you can buy low on him firstly because he's on the waiver wire. He's rostered in 17% of leagues as I'm recording this. He's missed 3 games due to injury already. Before this game, he's averaging 4.3 fantasy points. So you can definitely still buy low on him. A lot of people are going to view this game as like that was a spike week and now it's going to go back down, which I don't think he's going to have 30-point games every week, but I think he truly could have like a 15 to 20 point expectation in the playoffs every single week. And there's a lot of reason for optimism. He led the team in targets last week with 8, which by the way was a whopping 40% of the target share. 40% of the target share. Aaron Rodgers only threw the ball 20 times. And 8 of those times went to Christian Watson.
Yeah.
The second closest player was Allen Lazard, who had 4 targets. And we have seen there's a huge ceiling with him based off what we saw last week. And on the year, his 25% target rate is only behind Chris Olave and Drake London amongst rookies. The Packers desperately need an X-factor wide receiver. And in the past, because if you guys watch this game, Christian Watson started the game with 2 really bad drops. Bad drops. In the past, Aaron Rodgers would have been like, all right, I'm moving on from you. You literally can't. Romeo Doubs is injured. Randall Cobb is injured. Allen Lazard is who he is. Like, he's a good wide receiver.
Yeah.
You need Christian Watson to be really good for your team. So all the signs are there for Christian Watson, in my opinion, to be potential league winner. Again, potential league winner.
Right.
So again, do with this information what you want. I am targeting George Pickens, Deontay Johnson, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper, and Christian Watson based off this information. And you guys feel free to do the same if you like, because I think there's a lot of good buy low opportunities here heading into the playoffs.
Yeah, I love it. Love the list. Love the people. Christian Watson, crazy. I mean, last week we was like 2 concussions back to back, and then he pops off at 30-something plus points. He's crazy.
We weren't even sure he was going to play. It was like, oh, he got a concussion? And they're like, no, he's fine. I'm like, oh, okay, fine. We believe you.
It's weird. But, hey, good list. I love it. My first trade for target is Jamar Chase, and it's time. It's time to go out. It's time to do what you got to do to get him. I think it's here. I think I'm trying to bring this to you before the news comes out saying, oh, he's practicing in limited, participation. He's been in and out. And obviously this is more catered to teams that are, 7-2, 7-3, whatever the case may be. Teams that kind of solidify themselves in the playoffs already and are able to have Jamar Chase in, on their IR, on their bench. It's been about 4 weeks since Chase was injured with that hip bone or whatever the case may be. He hasn't been put on IR, which means that he could be coming back from it sooner rather than later. The timetable was 4 to 6 weeks. So worst case scenario, he's back week 13, right? One thing I want to say is that Chase, in my opinion, is probably the best player that could come off of injury and you can start immediately outside of maybe Hollywood Brown. But at the same time, he's going into D-Hop, who demands a lot of targets now. He's going to, Zach Ertz is out, but Rondell Moore has been showing up where Jamar Chase comes and he's demanding targets. Where Joe Burrow and that chemistry already is.
There's no question of it.
Yeah, Tyler Boyd takes a step back. T. Higgins is still there as a complimentary guy. Right. Yeah. Chase, before the injury, had 2 crazy back-to-back games where he finished as a wide receiver 1. Those 2 weeks combined, 15 receptions, 21 targets, over 260 yards, 4 touchdowns combined, over 65 fantasy points. He finished as a wide receiver 1 in both of those weeks. He was a wide receiver 4 before that. He is still currently the wide receiver 11. He's averaging 20 fantasy points per game and 10 targets per game. He is the workload guy. He is the guy, no doubt about it. When he comes back, he is going to get all of the work. And the schedule is not crazy, it's not amazing, but at the same time, we know that what's going to happen is that he's going to come back on the field, and Joe Burrow is going to throw the ball to Jamar Chase. Period. Right? His playoffs, Week 15 against the Bucks will allow the 60 most fantasy points, and Week 16 and Week 17 against the Patriots and the Bills, who currently are pretty good against the pass, specifically for fantasy, right? But we saw what the Bills did, just gave crazy numbers to JJ. And then the Patriots, coming off a bye, have been really up and down all year. So anything can happen, but I still feel really confident about going out and getting Jamar Chase. And at the moment, it sounds crazy, but if you look at you look at ECR and all what everyone is saying that you can get him for, they're saying you can get him for really cheap, right? Like some names that really probably shouldn't be the guys that you should be trading him for. So a little bit more realistic. By the way, names that they're saying around is like Terry, Cortland, DJ, Jacoby Myers, Michael Pittman. That feels a little bit unrealistic, right? I'm thinking more of people like a Debo, an Amari, Chris Godwin, and Mike Evans, people like that potentially that maybe you're a little bit hesitant. Maybe Chris Olave and Amari Cooper. Those are the guys, but you can go for a running back like JT based off name value if you're really good at running back depth. Maybe a Kent Walker if you're good at running back depth. Those are the type of guys. But based off of what everyone's saying, the community is saying, they're saying you can get them really low. By the way, these are the names. Ahead of Jamar Chase currently, Juju, Gabe Davis, Debo, Terry. I would give all those guys away for Chase right now if I'm in a winning position personally. So keep that in mind.
And I think that's a really good take on Jamar Chase. I think also it's important to note that just like trade calculators, which we don't trust, we don't trust ECR either. So I think you're right in saying that most people aren't going to give them up for those low names, but the high names, I think you can still get deals. I think you're right.
Yeah,
you can still get deals done, and I still prefer Chase over a lot of those names, most of those names actually that you said. So I agree. All right. So I've told you sneaky wide receiver buys.
Right.
How about we go into the most difficult position in fantasy football, and let's see what we can gather from some information, some research that I did for you guys. Let's talk about sneaky tight end buys for the playoffs.
Right.
Again, it's important to note that just because a tight end has a good matchup, we know for sure it does not mean they're going to have a good fantasy output. Okay. So do with this information what you would like to do. Again, I'm not telling you have to make some of these moves, but I'm giving you the information necessary for you to make whatever moves you feel are going to help you out in the playoffs.
Right.
So I researched the top 10 easiest schedules week by week for the fantasy tight ends in the playoffs, and I found the following. We have 8 tight ends who have 2 top 10 matchups in the playoffs. Those 8 tight ends are George Kittle, Tyler Conklin, Hunter Henry, Aiden Hurst, Ian Thomas, Robert Tonyan. I was going to say Zach Ertz, but we just found out he's out for the year. So Trey McBride and the Giants tight ends. We don't have a single tight end that has a top 3 matchup in every single, has a top 10 matchup in every single week. Right. But that's okay. I mean, the tight ends aren't always reliant on matchups. So, again, you can see week 15, week 16, and week 17 in front of you. Friendly reminder, number 32, the Cardinals are the easiest matchup in fantasy right now. Number 23, the Colts, all the way down. That is the 10th easiest matchup in fantasy right now. Let's be 100% honest. Let's be transparent. Guys like Ian Thomas, Hunter Henry, the Giants tight ends, just because they have good matchup doesn't mean I am rostering them. It doesn't mean I'm going to play them because they aren't involved in their game plans. So what can we take from this information, from this research? Well, I'll tell you, there are 3 tight ends that I'm going to go out and target based off of this information, and I'll tell you why you can target them. The first one is George Kittle. Okay, George Kittle, you can buy him low because he's the tight end 14 on the year, coming off a season low 3.1 fantasy points when they face on Sunday Night Football versus the Chargers.
Right.
He saw 1 target. Okay, you can definitely buy low on this guy. Reason for optimism. Why should we be optimistic? Well, there is already solidified chemistry with Jimmy G, and we see it all the time when teams get new weapons. Eventually, defenses adjust to those weapons. CMC, Debo Samuel, Ayuk. Now that everyone's all healthy, teams are going to have to game plan around this team now, okay? And we haven't seen any film of this team as a whole team until today right now, last night, when that game played. So George Kittle will be more important to this team as defenses adjust. And he's still on the field for 90 to 100% of the snaps on a weekly basis. Now, is George Kittle, is he the consistency of a Kelsey? Is he the consistency of an Andrews? No, he's not. And I don't know that he ever will be again. But he has proven that he can be a league-winning tight end. He has proven that in the past. The second tight end that I'm targeting from this information, and I think is the easiest buy low and probably on your waiver wire, is Trey McBride.
Yeah.
Trey McBride instantly became like one of the top waiver wire pickups for me when the news of Zach Ertz came out that he's out for the season.
Yeah.
Okay. Trey McBride is currently available in 95% of sleeper leagues, meaning it's very likely he's on your waiver wire.
Right.
And a lot of people might not know Trey McBride, but you and I, we cover Dynasty. We cover college football as well, like, the NFL draft, rather, looking at prospects. And Trey McBride was one of the guys that we scouted last year. Our comp for him was kind of like a little George Kittle-esque. He's a very good blocker, tough player. He can catch the ball. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, last year he had over 90 receptions, which is unheard of for tight ends in college. He was the best tight end prospect in the draft. And the reason he's not been productive is because Zach Ertz was there. I mean, you don't need to use McBride when you have Zach Ertz.
Yeah.
So I believe that Trey McBride can fill the Zach Ertz hole in this offense. I believe that he can. Zach Ertz has scored over 10 fantasy points every week except for this week when he was injured. I believe McBride has the skill sets, certainly as a receiver and as a blocker. There's not a scenario in which you don't want Trey McBride out there on the field now for you with Zach Ertz out. Best tight in the draft. And by the way, last week, I looked at the snap counts. We had Trey McBride with 62 snaps, Zach Ertz with 9, so he went down early, and then Steven Anderson with 25. So Trey McBride clearly was on the field. He's going to be the guy is what I'm trying to tell you. He's going to be the guy moving forward. And now that Ertz is out, you can practice with McBride as a tight end one. He'll get the tight end one reps. He'll get the chemistry with the quarterback. So for me, McBride could be in the conversation of not a league winner, but if you don't have a consistent tight end, pick him up and let's see what happens, or send a trade for him for one of the guys that are, one of the lowest guys on your bench, and let's see what can happen. All right, the third tight end I'm targeting from this list is Hayden Hurst. You can buy him low because he hasn't scored over 10 fantasy points or he has only scored over 10 fantasy points in one of the past 4 games. We haven't seen any bump in production since Chase was out. And the reason for optimism is there's a great matchup in the playoffs, which should be competitive games. Tampa Bay, New England, Buffalo, all those games you're going to need Hayden Hurst. You're going to need to throw the ball. And he's averaging over 9 fantasy points when Chase is healthy. So those are the 3 tight ends based off this information that I think are good buy lows and that I think could help you win some fantasy playoff games. So will they be consistent? No, but there's only 2 consistent tight ends in the NFL anyway. So those are the guys I'm targeting based off of the information that I researched.
Yeah, I love it. I love the pick. Trey McBride. Let's hopefully he comes in and takes up a massive role. So I'm believing in Brother Bribe. My second trade for target coming into this week is Garrett Wilson.
Okay.
And it may not be sexy. It may not sound sexy. I'm looking for those lower tier guys, kind of like what I bought the past couple weeks ago. Saying guys you can come in that can help your team in a flex opportunity that can be potential league winners, right? Since Breece Hall's injury, this team feels like it's gone in a different direction. They traded for James Robinson. They haven't been running the ball more. We've been seeing a little bit of an uptick in Garrett Wilson's production since Breece Hall has been down, right? And he's also clearly the only wide receiver on this team. It is not something that we expected. We didn't expect him to come in and be this massive, massive workload. I think we all expected Elijah Moore to play a significant part, which I think that was kind of took us back, that he's not that guy anymore on this team. There has been reports coming out during their bye week saying that he's going to move, the team's going to move him to the slot. So maybe something changes there, but someone at a lower tier opportunity like a Garrett Wilson, I think could be great for you. Garrett Wilson broke out in week 2. I think we all remember that game. Week 2, Cole 8 receptions, 14 targets, over 102 yards, 2 touchdowns. Wide receiver 6 had over 30 fantasy points on the week. Right, the last 2 weeks he's caught 14 out of 16 targets, over 200 yards, over 34 fantasy points. Let me remind you as well, that was against the Bills and the Patriots, who are really, really good defenses against the wide receiver position, specifically, obviously, for fantasy. And in my eyes, like I said, could be a league winner with some good opportunities coming about. And I know this is kind of shaky because you either have to believe in Zach Wilson. You actually really don't have to believe in him, but I think that's what will hinder a lot of people from actually doing this trade, is because they don't believe in Zach Wilson, which I believe could potentially take a step in the right direction, right? You know, we've seen this team winning. I think it's a combination of the defense and Zach Wilson the last 2 weeks, well, I think is good. And the matchups in the playoffs is good. Week 15 against the Lions allowed the 7th most fantasy points. Week 16 against the Jags, the 11th most fantasy points. And Week 17, a little bit hard against the Seahawks, the 8th fewest fantasy points. It's going to be a cheap price with a tremendous ceiling, in my opinion. I love Garrett Wilson and everything he's doing the last 2 games. 12, 14 fantasy points, and that's exactly what you're trying to look for someone in a flex position, right? So if you're going to be looking to trade for Garrett Wilson, these are some guys I will be giving up for him. A Darnell Mooney, a Brandon Cooks, and Adam Thielen, a Tyler Boyd, maybe not right now, but when Jamar Chase does come back, his value is going to drop. So maybe you can get a package for someone like a Tyler Boyd right now and get a Garrett Wilson, right? AJ Dillon and then Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So once again, not a massive name, not a guy that's going to, get you 30, 25 plus points. A guy, a good flex option that is very, very sneaky and shouldn't cost anything according to ECR. So I'll be getting Garrett Wilson. And he could be available on your waiver wires as well. So check that out as well.
Yeah, the talent isn't the question at all. When I was researching, I actually researched quarterback schedule, wide receiver, running. I researched them all. And I saw the Jets have some pretty good games, and I was like,
yeah,
something good is going to come from here.
Exactly.
I can't tell you exactly what, but something good. And it definitely could be Garrett, because he's the most talented wide receiver there, let's be honest. All right, my last trade for target is a player. Just one player.
One player.
And I'm going to tell you why you need to trade for him. And that is Alvin Kamara.
Okay.
There's a buy low window because he has back-to-back weeks under 10 fantasy points. Last week, he had just 7.5 fantasy points. And he has a tough upcoming schedule. If you look at his upcoming schedule and you're trying to, like the person who has him is trying to get into the playoffs, these are not ideal matchups. The Rams, the Niners, the Bucks, and then he still has a bye week. Okay? So, again, if you're in a good position, I think this is a running back that you should target if you're in a good position for the playoffs, or even if you're like 6-4. And, you're kind of like on that edge, but you're feeling pretty good about the team. I think you can still rely on Alvin Kamara up into the playoffs, but we're going to talk again why this is playoff focused. Firstly, Alvin Kamara is going to recover his form in the air. It will happen. As we know, most of his value comes from where? Through the air, targets, receptions. And it may be hard to see while we're in the midst of this lull performance from Alvin Kamara, but he is still amongst the elite running backs when it comes to target opportunity and target share. Through 10 weeks, only 2 running backs are averaging more targets per game than Alvin Kamara. Only 2. Those running backs are Austin Eckler with 9 per game.
Crazy.
What the hell? Christian McCaffrey with 6.7 per game, and then Alvin Kamara right behind him at 6.6 targets per game. You can actually see a pretty big drop-off from Eckler, but then also from CMC and Kamara. So, personally, if you're playing in a PPR league like we do, I still think Kamara has that crazy upside of those 20, 30-point games all the way throughout the playoffs.
Right.
And you might be looking at his last couple of weeks and see it as a concern, or you can use that as ammunition to go trade for the player. Again, back-to-back weeks under 10 fantasy points, but these lack of touches that he's had in the past 2 games are an outlier. They are an outlier, okay? They are not the rule. Let's look at Alvin Kamara's opportunities in 2022. From weeks 1 to 8, it's a pretty big sample size, 23.3 touches per game. That's what we're used to for Alvin. The last 2 weeks, weeks 9 to 10, 12.5 touches per game. And they're not playing well. They're losing games.
Yeah.
I don't know, Dennis Allen. Could there be any sort of connection here that you're losing games when Alvin Kamara is getting barely any opportunities.
Right.
Dennis Allen has shown incredible incompetence. And honestly, I have hope there as well that he's probably going to get fired soon.
Yeah.
You make all these moves, you make these trades in the draft. You are currently giving the Eagles a top 4 pick in the NFL draft, and it's yours. Change has to come, which probably means Dennis Allen's going to be fired.
Yeah.
And we know this when a coach gets fired, we simplify the game plan. All right, who's our best players? Alvin Kamara and Chris Olave. Let's not make this any more difficult than it needs to be. They should get the ball a ton. And Dennis Allen was in an interview this week, post-game press conference rather, interview like he's a celebrity, post-game press conference, and they were talking, like he was saying like, yeah, I understand we need to improve in this area. Jameis could be brought back. But regardless, my expectations for Alvin Kamara are much more the weeks 1 to 8 Kamara, those 20 plus touches per game, than it is what we've seen recently. I expect him to get back to those type of touches.
Yeah.
And the last thing, and what we're always focused on right now for these past 3 weeks, is looking at the playoffs. Let's look at his playoff schedule. So he has a bye in week 14, which again, if you're in a good position, you can use that to your advantage if you don't need to win in week 14. But then the playoffs start. In week 15, the Falcons give up the 12th most points to the position. In week 16, the Browns. How many of you guys have watched any Brown game this entire year? They are getting destroyed on the ground. They are getting absolutely mutilated on the ground by running backs. Austin Eckler, who, by the way, is averaging like not a very high yards per carry per game. Well, let's go back and look at what Austin Eckler did versus these Cleveland Browns. Okay? In week 5, Austin Eckler ran for 173 yards versus the Browns, averaging over 10.8 yards per carry. This is the matchup that you want in the playoffs, and you get it in week 16 in your semifinals. And then week 17 versus the Eagles, which this is a little bit misleading because I don't think it's necessarily an incredible matchup, but I also think it's important that it's a little bit deceptive that the Eagles are like a defense that you don't want to face for your running back, because I think that is very dependent on the type of running back. For Alvin Kamara, someone who's involved in the air, that doesn't really worry me as much as, let's say, like if a Nick Chubb was to face the Eagles. Like that would worry me a little bit more, someone who's not involved in the air. But as of right now, numbers don't lie through 11 weeks. This is an 11-week sample for these teams, and the Eagles are in the top half, so they're a good matchup technically, more middle of the pack rather than a good matchup. But I think Alvin Kamara is still going to be a reliable option moving forward. I'm going to give you a couple names. And again, like you don't have to do 1-for-1s, but you can look at packages for some of these guys. For the playoffs specifically, please keep in mind, for the playoffs, I'm not telling you in the next 3 weeks, Alvin Kamara is going to be better than the following running backs. But what I'm telling you is in the playoffs, I would rather have Alvin Kamara. Okay? Josh Jacobs. Okay? Fight me if you want to. I like Josh Jacobs. Ramondre Stevenson. Dalvin Cook, DeAndre Swift, Miles Sanders, and Joe Mixon. I prefer Alvin Kamara in the playoffs over those guys. I like his matchup. I like his opportunity better in those scenarios. So I'm buying Alvin Kamara for the playoffs. I love the matchups that he's got, and I think we're going to see him come back to his old self. And by the way, the whole thing with, his legal situation is not going to be addressed this year. It won't.
Not at all.
It's already been pushed back to January, so you don't need to worry about that.
Love the take. Love Alvin Kamara. Hopefully he turns it around. I think he should. He should be able to. My last trade for target, Drizzy Drake Rogers. Kenyon Drake. Sounds weird. I know. I'm looking for those low-key, sneaky guys.
I feel like Drake London is Drizzy Drake, but we can give it. We can give it. Kenyon.
You know what I was saying? I was doing a video the other day, and I was like, man, I keep wanting to say Greg Dulcich as Greg the Leg. But it's actually just Greg Dulcich. Anyways.
Yeah, we need to come up with a nickname for him.
For Greg Dulcich and Kenyon Drake.
Put some ideas in the chat here.
Look.
Anyway, Kenyon Drake.
Yeah, Drake could be a sneaky buy low, kind of another thought process, kind of like, a potential league winner, right? First of all, if you're struggling with running back depth, this is a great opportunity, in my opinion, that he can still be available in the waiver wires. He's available in 32% of leagues right now, so definitely go check that out. Number 2, he's not going to cost much. He shouldn't cost much whatsoever, right? The last 2 weeks combined, 31 attempts, 155 yards, 3 touchdowns, over 41 fantasy points. He was a running back 5 in the last 2 weeks. And I think that's sneaky value, especially with J.K. Dobbins. He should be out until the fantasy playoffs, but the projection is that he's coming back week 14, right? I don't believe that they're going to come back and then start him week 15, and then he's going to get a massive workload because they might want to keep him fresh potentially for some sort of playoff push, right? In the actual playoffs for the Ravens. So I don't feel as confident that they're going to start J.K. Dobbins, and he doesn't look the same right now, right? So I think it's going to take a long time. And this could also be skewed a little bit just based off of, Mark Andrews went down these last 2 games. Mark Andrews should be coming back off the bye week. Rashad Bateman is not there. But the people in the backfield don't scare me. When I say the people in the backfield, I'm thinking of Gus the Bus, and I'm thinking of really just Gus the Bus, actually. I thought of Justin Hill. But Justice Hill...
You got J.K. Dobbins coming back at some point. We don't know when.
At some point, exactly. But we just don't know when. The only person I'm a little bit, scared of is Gus the Bus. That's if Kenyon Drake goes down, though. Anyway, Drake has a great playoff matchup, right? And kind of what Zach was saying. Week 15 against the Browns, allow the second most fantasy points. And we saw what can happen with, Austin Eckler, can Kenyon Drake do that? Maybe Lamar is the guy, right? Week 16, the Atlanta Falcons, 12th most fantasy points to the running back position. In Week 17, against the Steelers, the 10th fewest fantasy points to the running back position. But I think that's okay. I think this could be a very, very sneaky opportunity for you if you can go get him right now. And once again, it doesn't cost much. It's an opportunity, a guy that you can start if you are struggling at the running back position. So these are some guys right now, according to ECR, that you can get for Kenyon Drake. And these are the names that are around him. Chuba Hubbard, Henderson, Melvin Gordon, Tyler Algier, and Isaiah Pacheco. I don't know if I'm pretty sure, in my opinion, that's pretty realistic to get a guy like Kenyon Drake right now because he only had 2 back-to-back games that he kind of popped off, and you're not going to be trading away someone like a Devin Singletary or Deontay Foreman away from him. I think it's even lower than that tier, which is fantastic. So if you can get him and he can stretch you into the playoffs, and then maybe J.K. Dobbins comes back and then it's kind of a little bit shaky, then we'll have a new conversation. But if you can get him for the next 4 weeks to get you to week 15, I think you're chilling right here. So I think Kenyon Drake is a good opportunity moving forward.
Yeah, Kenyon Drake's going to be really, that backfield's going to be super interesting to watch. Mm-hmm. I definitely agree with where you're coming from if I can do it for those names. I think the only name I'm iffy on is Pacheco because he looked pretty good and he's getting the opportunity.
He did.
So that might be the only name I'm a little bit iffy on, but all those other names, if that's where ECR is, I'm more than willing to take that shot on Kenyon Drake.
Yeah.
Is there so there's no part of you that is slightly worried about what this backfield could look like when people are healthy? So I think that will be a conversation people are going to have.
I'm not concerned when when J.K. Dobbins comes back. I don't know why I thought of that. Right. Like I said, he doesn't look the same, 1. 2, he's going to take a long time to come back.
Right.
And if he does come back, I don't think he's going to automatically jump to that 60%, workload, 50% workload. Yeah. I think he's going to come in and maybe take over the Gus Edwards role where Kenyon Drake is still getting the 60, 70, and then he gets 30, right, JK, until they start easing him in little by little. Sure. I think for sure right now you can get a week 15 Kenyon Drake against the Browns. Then it goes to week 16 where it goes, okay, is it going to be J.K. Dobbins or is it going to be Kenyon Drake? So that's
look, even if you could guarantee me that Kenyon Drake's the guy for week 15 alone versus the Browns,
exactly,
that's worth exploring. So I like it. All right, we're going to give you a couple trade aways. And as I've been doing with some of these positions, I've been looking at, bad matchups in the playoffs for some of these positions. I've done running backs, I've done wide receivers for you guys on our previous videos, and we've had conversations about it. Let's talk about the quarterback position and bad matchups in the playoffs. And this is really catered towards more super flex or people who are streaming the quarterback position.
Right.
If you have Josh Allen, what are you going to, you're going to play Josh Allen. You got Patrick Mahomes, you're going to play Patrick Mahomes. Mm-hmm. But I think it's important that we look at quarterbacks who have really bad matchups in the playoffs, and then you decide if you should maybe make some moves right now. I researched the top 10 hardest schedules for fantasy quarterbacks in the playoffs, and I found the following. All right. 6 quarterbacks have 2 bottom 10 matchups in the playoffs. Right. Justin Fields, our king, Justin Fields, our champion. Patrick Mahomes, Matthew Stafford, Geno Smith, Ryan Tannehill, and Tua Tagovailoa. And we have one quarterback who has a bottom 10 matchup in every single game, and that is Trevor Lawrence. So you can look at week 15 with me, week 16, and week 17. Again, just to clarify, the number one there by the Eagles, that means they're the most difficult matchup for fantasy quarterbacks. And the Jets are the 10th most difficult matchup for fantasy quarterbacks. So when I look at this information, one thing stands out to me very clearly, and that is Trevor Lawrence. And you might be watching this, you might like, why are we talking about Trevor Lawrence? Well, and again, in super flex leagues or people who are streaming the position, Trevor Lawrence could be an option that people are genuinely using right now and that they have in their starting lineup. I mean, the last 2 weeks, he hasn't scored under 18 fantasy points. Last week versus Kansas City, he almost had a 25-point game. We play 6-point passing touchdown leagues. So I think this is a real conversation. When it comes to Trevor Lawrence specifically, I actually really do want to move away from him for the playoffs. Like, genuinely, if I'm in Superflex, if I'm in a one quarterback streaming scenario, I think there's a lot better options that you'll find in the playoffs. How about a Deshaun Watson? Can I make that move right now? Am I in a good enough place where I can wait on Watson to come back in a Superflex league and just flex someone else in that Superflex position? Can I wait on Watson? Can I go get Justin Herbert? I know that sounds crazy right now, guys, but Justin Herbert has not looked good, and the Herbert owner knows that. Actually, right now, Justin Herbert's the quarterback 15, and Trevor Lawrence is a quarterback 9. So if you think that's unrealistic, it's just not. It's just not. And Herbert doesn't have his weapons, which I think will come back. How about Kirk Cousins? I'll take Kirk Cousins in the playoffs over Trevor Lawrence. And that was the main player I wanted to bring to your attention. But I also want to talk about Justin Fields for a second in the playoffs.
Okay.
Because I love Justin Fields. You love Justin Fields. Badake, we've been roasted for loving him all offseason.
Yeah.
But I also mentioned on our streams a couple weeks ago, like 3 to 4 weeks ago, that, hey, Justin Fields is going to be an incredible starter for this stretch here, which the stretch was Miami, Detroit, Atlanta. That was really the stretch here. And we're kind of in the middle of that stretch where he's put up 40-point performances against these really bad defenses versus the quarterback.
Right.
I think we're seeing a legit breakout from Justin Fields. I truly do. Do I think he is matchup proof yet? Like, let's have that conversation. I don't know if he's matchup proof yet. Like, I have him in our home league. Am I going to start him week 15 versus the Eagles? And if not, does that mean I should potentially look at other options for Justin Fields? Can I get a Lamar Jackson? That might sound crazy. It's not. Lamar Jackson's had a lot of pedestrian performances as of recent. Okay, if you look at Lamar Jackson's performances since week 7, we got a 10-point performance. We got a 25-point performance. We got an 18-point performance. Fields is currently the quarterback 3. Lamar's the quarterback 5. So, again, I think there are conversations that you could potentially have knowing that Fields has the Eagles and then he goes to the Bills in week 16. Like, is Fields someone that you feel you're going to trust in week 15 and 16? I'm asking you, Badake, because I don't know what my answer is yet.
Right.
Like, should I look at exploring options to move Fields? Maybe not now because he has a great matchup, but maybe week 12 onwards. Maybe I look at options to move Justin Fields. Like, what do you think?
My thing is,
it's tough, man.
What if you just half that? What if Justin Fields wasn't scoring?
Agreed.
It's
unrealistic to expect him to put another 40 points.
And I know, and I think that's what would be a little bit more realistic against Philly and Buffalo. He's still going to run the ball on the ground. Passing will probably most inefficient time that he can actually have. Yeah. Or inefficient. Yeah, for sure. So if he can kind of score a touchdown with his legs and, run for 80 plus yards, I think that would be okay. I think that would be okay against Philly, against Buffalo. Can you get Lamar? Sure. I'm happy with that because there's definitely opportunity. What about someone like a Kyler? It's probably not the sexiest schedule.
Because I looked at his schedule as well.
I was looking at his schedule. He has Denver, Tampa Bay, and then Atlanta. It's tough. It's tough. Really.
Yeah, it is really interesting, man. I mean, if I can get Lamar, I think I would do that after this week because Lamar's on bye this week and you play Atlanta. I fully anticipate another good game, like at least 20 points for Justin Fields this week.
Yeah.
And if I can then go get Lamar Jackson I think I might look at doing that deal. I mean, you probably can't get a Jalen Hurts. You might be able to get a Josh Allen with his injury right now. Like, as crazy as that sounds, if people are worried, maybe they're not. But I
Right.
don't know. It's just, anyway, I'm giving you guys purely facts and data here. You do whatever you want with this. But it's something that I'm considering because I'm not going to move Patrick Mahomes. I'm probably not going to move Tua. With those wide receivers, he's got a 30-point upside every single week. Geno Smith is definitely someone I'm interested in moving away from.
Right.
But anyway, I thought this
So-
would be helpful. And do whatever you want with this information. Really.
Do you? No, I like it. I think it's very interesting. One last thing for the conversation standpoint. Would you trust? I have a hard time. I'm telling people to pick up Deshaun Watson. Like even myself. Like I'm saying, I've done the action of picking up Deshaun Watson, holding him off waiver wires. But if I had someone like a Kirk Cousins that has a really good playoff schedule, but Deshaun Watson, is upside, but hasn't played in a long time. Do we start Deshaun Watson over someone like a Kirk Cousins still? Like,
You're gonna have that information, I think, before the playoffs because you're gonna see a couple games
right,
of
right.
Deshaun Watson, and you're gonna know what his form is. So
Yeah.
I think we don't know it just yet.
Yeah, and I think that's the scary part for me about Deshaun Watson. Because I'm picking him up. I'm telling people to pick him up because I do believe the upside. But there's another part of me that's like, what if he's just bad because he hasn't played in so long and there's no rhythm there?
Funnily enough, like the problem hasn't been offensively for them. So I don't think it's going to be a tough transition for him getting into this offense. You have an incredible run game. The offensive line is good. The wide receivers are stepping up. It's the defense that's really kind of let them down this year. So yeah, it'll be interesting. But I mean, if you have Jacoby Brissett out there putting up 20-point games, which he's done like 3 times this year, I believe, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting. That's all I'll say.
It will be interesting. All right, I think my trade away is pretty obvious.
Trade away, right?
Trade away. Sorry, my trade away players is pretty obvious. Deontay Foreman and or DJ Moore. 4 words: Baker Mayfield is shit. Period. He's not going to be good. PJ Walker's not there. He's out with a high ankle sprain. The timetable is still unknown, if I'm not mistaken. I think it could be 2 to 4 or 4 to 6. But either way, if he's not here, then there's no upside with these players, in my opinion. Deontay Foreman, it's a little bit tougher. Because it can go up and down either way. But DJ Moore loses complete value. Weeks 1 to 5. With Baker Mayfield, he was the wide receiver 47. Week 6 to 10. He was the wide receiver 20 with Walker. And you can see the difference in how this team operates and how this team has gone about moving with PJ Walker. And going back to Baker Mayfield is not something that I want. Deontay Foreman, once again, it's a little bit different. I think Deontay Foreman is based off schedule and based off of matchup, and that's going into week in and week out, right? He has the Broncos. He has the Seahawks, Pitt, Tampa Bay. I think the ones that I'll feel really confident in starting him is probably the Detroit Lions in Week 16. But at the same time, where's the upside there? Because I think Baker Mayfield really lowers or just completely drops everyone's upside. It was really hard for him to convert on third downs. It's hard for him to complete a pass that seems very easy, something like a PJ Walker was doing. A lot of batted balls on the ground, which means less time on the field, right? So I think when you think of Deontay Foreman, can you run 35 plus times with Foreman? I doubt it. I mean, he did get 31 carries this past week, but he only got 19 points. Someone getting 30-something plus points, you're thinking, I guess it's good if you're getting 19 points from Deontay Foreman. He has 31 carries, right? I mean, maybe my expectations is a little bit too high, but I'm looking to moving away from Deontay Foreman now while the price is high before it drops tremendously. And Zach and I have been saying this all the time. It's always based off matchup. So someone that needs Deontay Foreman that's just saw him get 19 fantasy points and then 31 the week before, come talk to me, right? So that's the thought process here. For Deontay Foreman specifically, I'm looking at like a James Robinson, a Michael Carter, a Zeke, a Singletary. That's kind of where the ECR, a Jamal Williams, that's where the ECR is at right now. Antonio Gibson, I'm happy to do as well. And Jacoby Myers. DJ Moore is a little bit more shaky. I think it all depends on what you can really get. According to ECR, they're saying Cortland Sutton, the Jamar Chases, Michael Pittman, Jacoby Myers, Allen Lazard. If I can get a Cortland Sutton for DJ Moore right now, I'll be really happy. Personally, Jerry Jeudy's going to miss some time, even though that offense is struggling. I still believe in the bounce back because I don't want to rely. I mean, would you rely on Baker Mayfield or Russell Wilson?
Yeah, that's a good question. Are you asking me genuinely, or are you just like?
I guess it's a genuine question. Yeah, that's a hard because I don't want either of those guys to throw to my wide receiver.
I don't know.
But at the same time, I think I'd rather have Russ personally than Baker Mayfield.
That is a really tough one to answer.
Yeah, I mean, you can get a Terry right now according to ECR. I would definitely get Terry. Obviously, Jamar Chase, Michael Pittman. Now with I think a lot of people are going to say, well, Matt Ryan's back. They're going to revalue him again.
I think Michael Pittman, it looks so much better for him now that we have Matt Ryan, and that's just I agree with you is what I'm saying.
And maybe sell the thought process of that. DJ Moore has a really good matchup schedule. Zach Porter earlier in the video was saying that he was going to be one of those guys on that list, but at the same time, how much can you trust him, right? He has a really good schedule going forward into the playoffs. Yeah. So maybe someone out there really wants to take the risk. Maybe there's a team that's, that could win right now, that may be undefeated or only has one loss and says, what, I'll take the chance on DJ Moore. And maybe he has somebody that he just doesn't really trust out there. So I'm getting rid of anyone and everyone on the Carolina Panthers personally. With Baker Mayfield. If somehow PJ Walker comes back in 2 weeks before the playoffs, we'll have a new conversation. Genuinely, he actually makes the team better.
I think the hard part is we're not going to be able to make trades at that time.
That's true. You're not going to be able to make trades. So that is the hard part.
You got to kind of have to figure it out going forward. I'm definitely on board with the DJ Moore. Deonta Foreman, I'm like, this guy looks freaking good, but if you can get one of those guys, I'm definitely open to it. One of those guys that you mentioned. I think James Robinson is a really sneaky one that you mentioned as well. He has a great playoff matchup, so I like it. All right. So, if you got to the end of the video, what we always do every week is we ask you to give us a top 5 of something. Okay, we've done top 5 movies. We've done top 5. I mean, we've done a lot of top 5s. Okay, if you've watched to the very end, I just want to know who's watched to the very end. So comment down below your top 5 fast food chains. I want to know your top 5 fast food chains. For me, if you know literally anything about me, number 1 is going to be Chick-fil-A. Undefeated number 1, Chick-fil-A for me. I think there's a huge debate after that. Do you have a top 5 in mind, or a top 3, or number 1?
It's tough. It's a toughie.
It sits on my desk every day, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, obviously Chick-fil-A is up there, and obviously I'm trying to find a different one. Gosh. We've always had this conversation.
And again, top 5 does not need to be the most popular. It's it's your top 5. Who is your top 5? I know some people in the Midwest are probably going to have Culver's in there, right? Because Culver's a big thing in the Midwest. Some people are going to have Raising Cane's in there. Cane's. There's certain regional ones that are in that top 5. All I know is Chick-fil-A is number 1. But I'm curious. Yeah, no matter where I go, it's number 1.
For me, I think let's put McDonald's there. Chick-fil-A is there, obviously. Low key underrated, Panera Bread. Shout out to
I wouldn't put Panera in that fast food category though.
The mac and cheese. You won't put Panera Bread in fast
No, I wouldn't, but I agree they would be in top 5, but they're not fast food. In my opinion.
KFC in Australia, well, that's American though. KFC in Australia is top 5, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Ooh, Popeyes.
How about I'm going to put someone else in my top 5. Okay? And that's going to be Popeyes.
Yeah. Yeah. Popeyes, exactly.
I'll put Popeyes in my top 5. The chicken's incredible there. And for convenience and price sake, I think Wendy's should be in the conversation as well. I mean, how many other places can you go and get 5 for $5? $5 for 5 items. Pretty rare.
How many other places can you
get
5 for 5?
Let us know your top 5. I'll be curious to see. There'll be a lot of people out there who are like, Raising Cane's is better than Chick-fil-A. And to those people, we'll never be friends. I'm sorry. We'll just never be
I'll be honest, I've never had Raising Cane's.
I like Raising Cane's. I do. But it's not better than Chick-fil-A.
Never been.
People just want to hate on Chick-fil-A because it's the GOAT.
GOAT.
Anyway. All right, guys. Huge love. Drop a like, subscribe, and we'll see you next week.
Yo, what's good? Thanks for watching. We got a lot more videos.
A lot more.
If you want more videos,
watch it.
You can also subscribe
right now
if you want to.
You need to.
And lastly, don't forget that you can sign up to support the show and get exclusive content by going to patreon.com/FantasyLand fam.